Rookie quarterback Bo Nix for the Denver Broncos must be their starting quarterback once we get to week 1, but it starts in rookie minicamp. He's been lighting it up. We've been talking about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydays. And you know I got to kick this intro to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at TheTalentCode. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Tigers, man. And the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we are your number one source for everything NFL draft content, everything NFL content. DP, man, I want to say shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. If you haven't hit the like button, go ahead, hit that like button. This is an action-packed show. We're talking quarterbacks. Make sure to drop a comment after each segment. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. DP, we're talking quarterbacks. We're talking Bo Nix. We're talking Michael Penix checking all the boxes in Atlanta. Then we're talking about a sleeper 7th-round pick in New England, Mr. Joe Milton. We're going to have a really fun conversation, man. Rookie mini camps are wrapping up for some franchises, and we're going to have the conversation about what these rookie quarterbacks are, what they're going to do heading into week 1. But before we get started, man, why don't you hit them with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Bo Nix lighting it up, shining in camp, Keith, in rookie camp. And there was a quote from one of the local beat reporters, I believe his name is Zach Stevens, a couple days ago, where he tweeted, matter of fact, I think it was a day or two ago. Yeah. He's per quote, "I am really blown away. You could have told me that he was the number 1 quarterback drafted, and I would have said, yep, he lived up to it." Talking about how impressed he was with Bo Nix from rookie minicamp, Keith. We just kind of talked about rookie minicamp and how you value it and everything. And, just to see these quarterbacks come out and look good is a good thing, right? It's a good feeling, especially if you're a Denver Broncos fan. They released veteran quarterback Ben DiNucci, right? So it was Ben DiNucci, Jarrett Stidham, and Bo Nix. Keith, for everything I'm seeing, all the stars are aligning for Bo Nix to take this momentum from rookie minicamp into OTAs in the training camp. And when we get to week 1 of the season, there is no Jarrett Stidham starting. It is Bo Nix, right? And the question I have for you, Keith, is with all the good reviews coming from camp, this is a 5-year. This young man has started 5 consecutive years. He played all 5 years as a starter in college, from Auburn all the way through Oregon. Is there any reason to sit Bo Nix?
Yeah, I feel like there is. And the reason I would say, and this is just my thought process and my philosophy, just period, right? When in regards to rookie quarterbacks, right? Obviously, one, I don't like putting them in bad situations, and I don't know how great the situation is in Denver. And then if they're simply not ready, then I don't believe in playing them. Like I understand that sometimes you have to experience things, right? And that's how you have to get better. But I don't think you have to experience them bad, right? Like we don't have to do the bad version of it, especially with rookie quarterback. We don't have to put you in the game if it's all bad, right? So that's how I kind of look at it from that perspective. But is it a good sign that he's playing well in rookie minicamp? Yeah, and I know some people are going to sit there and they're going to be like, okay, it's rookie minicamp. Well, would you rather him be playing bad, right? Like if you would rather the good part. If he's playing bad, then we should be really nervous, right? But at least he checked that first box. I watched Bo Nix, and then him having a familiar face out there in Troy Franklin, I think it'd be very important. But then also, I want to break down real quick the human element that's added to this. And we're like, okay, well, what are you talking about? That Sean Payton got rid of Russell Wilson, right? And then the very next draft, he drafted Bo Nix, meaning that he's attached his name, his career, his legacy to Bo Nix, right? So Sean Payton is going to do whatever he has to do to keep Bo Nix up, because in turn, that's keeping himself up, right? And I always try to apply because, just for the fans right out there to understand that it's still humans, right? Sean Payton is a Super Bowl winner, one of the greatest offensive geniuses of all time, right? When we're talking about just NFL being a coordinator and everything. But at the end of the day, they're still humans, and you're going to look out what's best for you. And Sean Payton is going to, I feel like he's going to invest his all into Bo Nix because he selected Bo Nix. And we talked about this from the very beginning, DP. From the very beginning. What do we say? He's going to have appeal. Why? Because he's a coach's son, right? So he's going to break this thing down. He's going to have those fun conversations with him. He's going to have the film sessions with him. And Denver appears, in my opinion, to be a good spot for a guy like Bo Nix, right? Like, because you liken it to Zach Wilson. And New York was not the spot for Zach Wilson. And I think Zach Wilson is on this.
He is.
Yeah, right. So I was gonna see that's crazy how that works out. It's a good spot because he's almost out the way. The expectations, if you ask me, right, are relatively average to low, right, as far as what the Denver Broncos are going to do this year. So maybe he can take his lumps while they'll be in the game. Even if he starts week 1, they won't be on a national spotlight and everybody's tuning in and tapping in.
Yeah, and I think there was a quote from Coach Payton. He said that Nix has been everything that they've expected him to be, right? So you could, like you said, he's tied his name, and I expect to see the best version of Sean Payton as a play caller, as a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
I expect to see the best version of the New Orleans Saints type version of Sean Payton, because as you said, I don't think he gets another shot as a head coach if this fails, right? If you mishandled and mistreated a winning quarterback like Russell Wilson, who was winning games for you, who was playing well, statistically was on a good level of production and everything, when your team wasn't even that good, to go from that, and then you draft a quarterback that a lot of people did not view as a top 15 player, not just pick, but player in the 2024 NFL draft. And if this fails, Sean Payton, you might not get another shot as a head coach again, right? So I do think that he's going to give his all, and I think Bo Nix, truthfully, like, when Sean Payton's dialed in, I think he's the perfect coach for a Bo Nix, because he's going to make sure the play concepts are to his liking. Like, he's going to scheme it up right, give him easy reads. The stuff that Oregon was able to do for Bo Nix. The reason why Bo Nix took that leap at Oregon, the offense was so in terms of like reads and progressions, it was easy. A lot of high, low stuff. It was, people call him check down Charlie, because of the fact that he threw a lot of screens, he threw a lot of east and west passes. Not saying that that's all he can do, but it got him into a rhythm early in games, to where then if you want to take those isolated deep shots to Troy Franklin, now he's in rhythm, right? It's like just like basketball, Keith. What do they say? Sometimes you got to get that layup, sometimes you need that free throw to kind of get your rhythm, to get your confidence up, because after a while the bucket looks bigger for you when you start seeing the ball go through the hoop. It's the same thing with quarterbacks. Just getting those easy completions, right? Gets those guys momentum going, builds that confidence. The game slows down for them. And then about third quarter, they're playing at the highest of level to their actual skill set. And they're not thinking, they're more reaction and just playing ball. So I'm excited to see what Bo Nix can do. I think that, we're going to see what this wide receiver core looks like. We're going to have a discussion about that soon, because there's a rookie, as you alluded to earlier, with Troy Franklin, that might be able to push a second year receiver on this team. So we'll talk about that in the coming days. But with Bo Nix, man, it's good to see he's performing well in rookie camp. Now let's get the OTAs, let's get them veterans in there, right? Let's see how things look when you're targeting Pat Surtain, PS2. Let's see how things look when you get the first team edge rushers, be able to get some pressure on you and muddy the pockets. Let's see how those things look then. But so far, so good for Bo Nix.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and I think Sean Payton back up to that point. He's up for it, right? It's the same guy that took Taysom Hill and was like, you know what, I'm gonna turn you into a starting NFL quarterback, right? So he's definitely
got him paid.
Yeah, got him paid a lot of money, DP. So he's definitely up for the task at the end of the day. But let's keep this thing going and flowing. And where are we going to? We're going to Atlanta. Hotlanta. Michael Penix Jr. selected to the Atlanta Falcons with the number 8 overall pick. Is he checking all the boxes already? I think this is going to be a fun battle, because I think both of these guys are going to have some wild moments in training camp. But coming up next, man, we're going to talk about Michael Penix Jr. with the Atlanta Falcons.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Guys, it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Again, right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Guys, that's $150 that you get to use at your disposal to bet on everything from spreads to money lines, player props, and I mean so much more. This is a deal you do not want to miss. How do you get this deal? Well, let me help you. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count, because FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Checking all the boxes in the ATL. Michael Penix Jr., the 8th overall pick from the 2024 NFL Draft, Keith. It's looking at the clips, seeing the things from rookie minicamp. He is spinning it. Just missiles, like tight spirals. They're on the money. He looks good out there, Keith, from what I've seen and from what I've heard. And that's why this situation is so weird, because as he continues this and this path continues, right? This process and progress continues in the training camp. Yes, I know people are going to be like, well, you paid Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed. 100%. I'm not going to dispute that. But I'm not going to sit here and act like Kirk Cousins' leash is long. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, Michael Penix Jr., he's checking those boxes. He looks like a guy that's comfortable. He looks, and it's crazy because he looks like the guy that we saw at Washington, dropping back, like even from a mechanical standpoint. I remember watching some of the clips of him throwing. And, you know, I think they did some 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 type stuff. I think it was 7-on-7 stuff. And just his mechanics looked a little bit better than it did at Washington. That was one of my biggest critiques with him, where his upper body and lower body wasn't always in sync. Like his hips and his feet were pointed one direction. His torso was in a different direction. He's throwing the ball. It's just, at times, it was disconjointed to me. But then watching him, like, in camp, you know, from the videos I saw and talking to some of the people, I'm like, man, like, okay, Michael Penix Jr. looks mirrored. Everything's mirrored together. Everything's on time, in sync. And I'm like, this is the Michael Penix that is going to make it difficult on the Falcons. Because if he continues this in the training camp, AJ Terrell's out there, you know, Grady Jarrett's out there, right? All these guys are out there. Jesse Bates. It's going to be hard to keep this. I don't care what anybody says. It's going to be hard to keep Michael Penix Jr. off the field if he continues this type of play, because he's looked good.
Yeah, and I guess for the momentum, right? What does he have to do? He has to have a strong OTAs, right? Then strong training camp, and then strong preseason, right? And then you just kind of let that be the lasting thought for the Atlanta Falcons fans, right? But I do believe this, that Kirk Cousins is going to play well enough to where I think Falcons fans are going to be okay, right? Because Kirk Cousins throughout his entire career, especially with the Vikings, you know, he's been a high level passer, right? Like he's going to throw for 250, 2 to 3 touchdowns and things like that, right? It's going to be the postseason stuff to where he's, you know, that's what you're going to have the concerns about. But I think he's going to be able to keep them at bay for at least a year, maybe 2, right? And you want to know how long Kirk Cousins' leash is? It's as long as the contract, right? You got 3 years, buddy, and that's a wrap. So it's about the development of Michael Penix. I'm happy to see him out there doing well. Something, you know, when we had the interview with him with the Draft Network and we talked to him, and he talked about how him and Raheem Morris were on the same page, right? In that conversation. I thought that was so important, because when you have a head coach that believes in you, that knows how to communicate to you, right? And we talked about those relaxed moments. He's able to take those high intense moments and turn them to relaxed moments, right? Whether that, you know, that's in the game, learning moments, you just threw an interception, things like that. Those are so very vital and so very important. The relationship between Joe Burrow, Joe Brady, and our offensive coordinator, Steve Ensminger, right? It was that type of relationship, right? Like they communicated with each other to be able to move everything forward. And I thought that the relationship played itself out on the field, right? That's why we call Joe Burrow Joe Cool, right? Joe Shiesty. He's just always a cool, calm, collected guy. And I just believe this, that you're always able to make the best decisions when you keep a calm head, right? Like that you remove the emotional decisions from it. And I want to see that with Michael Penix. And I think Raheem Morris can get that out of him, because it just appears that Raheem Morris is that type of coach, that player's coach, that understanding of who you are.
No, 100%. Just watching a lot of the passes, that zip, the arm talent. I think that's what, like, when we get to training camp, Keith, you know how it is at the combine where you got two guys throwing back to back,
yeah.
And the arm talent's a little different. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's going to be a kind of an eye-opening moment for fans and for some of the coaches, where it's like, don't get me wrong, I saw some of the stuff, I think, from the OTAs and on like the minicamp, whatever, with the vets, where Kirk Cousins was getting his first action, throwing to Drake, one of those guys, and he looked good, right? Like, he was out there just carefree throwing the ball, and it's easy to be carefree when Michael Penix Jr. isn't behind you, right? Because he's being drafted and everything else. Now we get to training camp, and you're going throw for throw. You're going, you're rotating reps. May not be with, the ones, but guys be able to watch you throw a 40-yard pass and then watch Michael Penix throw a 40-yard pass. And like, there's just a little bit more zip on that ball from the young buck, right? Like, it's going to be those type of thoughts. It's going to infiltrate the mind of coaches, because we know that's how it looks. And I think we talked about this. This is a comp I kind of always had for him, was like what we saw from Geno Smith, right? Like the Seattle Seahawks version of Geno Smith. I just feel like you can, with his age, of course, being a younger player, he can come in and play at that type of level once he gets on the field. And the arm talent and similar offenses and everything like that, with Zach, I think it's Zach Robinson from the
Rams, yep.
And everything. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm really interested, Keith, is how are they going to divvy up the preseason reps, right? Because Kirk Cousins is a veteran. How many veterans 30-plus-year-old quarterbacks want to take snaps in the preseason? It's like, man, if you don't leave me on the bench let me eat my sunflower seeds and wait till week 1. I'm not trying to go out here and have some young buck who's trying to make their other team's roster get a free shot on me, and now I'm out for 6 weeks with a broken collarbone or something crazy like that because we missed a block. Like, no, let me eat my sunflower seeds. Let me wear my bucket hat. I'll help you coach from the sideline, and I'll be ready for week 1. I want to know I'm really curious. How do you feel? How should they handle those preseason reps for Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr.? Because honestly, we know what Kirk Cousins is. I'd rather just see Michael Penix for the most of the preseason. And I'm just going to be honest.
Well, this is the thing. I foresee Kirk Cousins being the starter, right? We have to be aware that he's coming off of a torn Achilles, right? And so you want to get him to week 1 healthy at the end of the day. So I foresee Kirk probably playing a half in the second game, right? We have 3 preseason games. Like in the second game of the season, he's probably going to second preseason game. He's probably going to play a half of football somewhere around there, and then he's going to be done, right? He's going to shut it down. He's going to make sure he's cool. I foresee Kirk Cousins getting most of his work done in training camp, right? Like in the actual training camp, and we know how this goes, right? With the dual practices and things like that. He'll get most of his reps there, and then I think that plays out perfectly fine for Michael Penix, right? Because you have to get used to, and what people understand is like the comfortability of when you're somewhere for a period of time and then being taken out of that spot, right? Like when they talk about the home field advantage, Michael Penix Jr. is going to have to get comfortable with at the Atlanta Falcons, right? Being his home field, right? Like, so the familiar faces on a sideline, like all of that stuff matters when it goes into just being comfortable. And I know exactly where to look, right? Where, the people that signaling stuff, if they signaling stuff in, or to see my head coach, right? If, potentially calling a timeout and things like that, you have to become comfortable in knowing exactly how my sideline setup is. So I would play Michael Penix a whole lot. Like if you're trying to get him ready, if you're trying to get the bumps and bruises, because why not play him against the other team's second and third stringers also, so he's able to make, do well against them, but also if he has a mistake or two, right, it won't cost you an interception because it's not going against all-pro safety or all-pro corner, right? Like, and so that way he can kind of continue to get his feet wet. So I would probably play Michael Penix Jr. a whole lot during the preseason because I would want to know exactly what I have, because just in case we may have to make that move, he's fully comfortable with the in-game operations, the 4-minute drill, 2-minute drill, things like that. He's fully comfortable with it because he's seen it and done it before.
100%. And I think also, for me, I think Kirk Cousins, I think, how NFL coaches are, Keith. They put their starters out there for a drive or two, and if you score early, all right, we're done. You know what I mean? Like, good. We got that. We got the rhythm going. We got the long drive, 70 yards, touchdown. All right, guys, come off the field. Or Kirk Cousins come off the field. We might throw Michael Penix, and that's going to be a different thing too for getting those guys used to. Now you got two quarterbacks who throw different, who are different arm talent, not just talents, but one's a right-handed thrower, and one is a left-handed thrower. You know what I mean? So it's like I was watching one of the clips where I can't remember the player's name, is a rookie, and Michael Penix threw it was a short little check down to him, quick hitch route, and the kid dropped it, right? And I was like, don't get me wrong, Michael Penix got, it was some zip behind the ball, but I was just like, he's probably not used to catching passes because it spins. It's a different spin.
It spins the opposite way.
It's the opposite type of spin from a left-handed quarterback. So, like with left-handed quarterback who got a strong arm, that's a different ball game, man. You know what I mean? And we've seen a few left-handed quarterbacks in the league. Vic, Tua. Was Doug Flutie left-handed?
I can't remember. I know he was short.
Yeah,
I remember he was left-handed.
But yeah, so I think that's going to be a different thing too. Is like you do want him to get some exposure with Drake and Pitts and those starters, because it's like, what if something happens with Kirk Cousins week 9 and you got to put him in, and you don't want those guys not being used to catching catching any passes from the young man. So it's going to be interesting. But he's checking the boxes right now through rookie minicamp, and then we get in the OTAs and training camp. And we got guys, we're going to keep this thing rolling. We're going to stay locked into what these rookies are doing.
Yep, 100% with DP. Let's wrap up with a 7th round pick, right? Mr. Joe Milton, Mr. 6'5", 240 himself, man, has all the physical traits and physical tools in the world. Went in the 7th round to the New England Patriots. But what does that mean? And what is the plan for Joe Milton in New England? We're talking about that coming up next.
Guys, we all know how frustrating it is and how frustrating it can be when buying tickets to your favorite NFL team and games, right? Especially when you're trying to get them at the last minute. But guys, let me tell you about Game Time. With killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets. Speaking of buying NFL tickets, guys, I'm telling you right now, if you go to the Game Time app, at the top of the page, they have a tab that says 2024 NFL. Basically meaning it shows you all of the teams and the ticket prices right now. Now, they don't have the dates yet because the NFL schedule has not been released, but you can go and get tickets right now. For example, the Miami Dolphins heading to play the Buffalo Bills, you can get tickets for that game as cheap as $117 with Game Time. So, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydayers. The plan for 7th round developmental quarterback Joe Milton for the New England Patriots. And when this pick was made, it was a little weird to me because I was like, man, you go 3rd overall, you take Drake May, right? Like that's supposed to be your franchise guy. I always think it's a slippery slope when you draft 2 quarterbacks in the same draft, right? We saw with RG3 and Kirk Cousins and how that played out. Was Brock Purdy in the same class as Trey Lance? If I remember correctly, I think he was, he was a 7th round in the same. I think it was in the same class, right?
May have been.
And so that's always a slippery slope for me because we've seen how a draft mate has taken the job from the higher draft pick. Not saying that this is going to happen with Joe Milton, but Keith, I think the plan for me when I look at this situation, Joe Milton, I was watching some of the throws from rookie minicamp between him and Drake May, and one of the things I pay attention to, I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, to our listeners, to our everydayers. I think Joe Milton has better mechanics throwing the football than Drake May. The ball is coming out like both these guys have strong arms. Joe's arm, I think, is only at that elite tier. Where if Joe plays substantial snaps, he's like a top 5 to 7 arm talent in the league easily, right? The amount of velocity, RPMs, and everything that he can generate with just relative ease. In terms of his body mechanics, like it's insane. Like, you know what I mean? That whole adage of, man, he's got an arm, you could throw it through a brick wall. No, Joe Milton can absolutely do that. I truly believe that, right? And Drake May's a strong arm too, but just watching their mechanics, Joe's mechanic, like his throw mechanics, is quicker. It's tighter, more concise and precise, from an upper body standpoint, where I still see some wasted movement from Drake May. But just kind of watching them, I'm like, you know what? That's, we just had that conversation about preseason with Michael Penix and the vet. You got two rookies you got to get your eyes on if you're the New England Patriots. You got, you got to get, the reps for Drake May, but maybe, okay, you start Drake May maybe a half in the first and second preseason game, right? Joe Milton finishes out half two in both of those. Maybe you start Joe Milton for the entire third game, right? Because what I think the plan for Joe Milton is going to be, and I think Elliot Wolf said, the new GM, Elliot Wolf said this, he has too many tools to pass up on in that position and not draft, because the Patriots have been known to do this, Keith. When they had Tom Brady, they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo. They drafted Cliff Kingsbury. I believe they drafted Kevin O'Connell when he was a quarterback coming out of college as well. They were always been known for drafting the quarterback on day three, maybe late day 2, day 3, and then trying to give them the reps in the preseason to flip for a pick. I think that might be the plan for Joe Milton for him to see the field. I don't think he's going to see the field in New England, because it's hard to beat out a third overall pick who's going to play, who the team wants to play. This isn't a Trey Lance situation where it's like, we already got a veteran to let you sit behind. No, like Drake May's going to play. Well, he does have Jacoby, but he's going to play. I think Joe Milton is probably playing, honestly, to audition for another team.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a very real possibility, right? And if you're Joe in his camp, you know that, right? And you're perfectly fine with that at the end of the day, because this situation is a very tricky situation, right? You may potentially rather be somewhere like Las Vegas, right, where they're not 100% brought in on their quarterback, but their starter is their starter, right? Or somewhere like that. But a Drake May situation, and this goes back, DP, to the first conversation that we had with Sean Payton being tied to Bo Nix, right? That you're gonna do what's best for you. If Joe Milton ends up being the starting quarterback in New England, right, there's gonna be a lot of trouble. We're gonna have a lot of questions that have to get answered, right? So I'm with you. I do not foresee that being the situation, but can it be a good situation for Joe Milton to prove that he's a professional, right? That he can run an NFL offense, that he can be consistent in what he does. Yes. And then you put it on film, and then you go ask to be somewhere else potentially. Or like you said, New England, that may be a part of their plan anyway, to be able to draft him, sit him for a year, or even draft him, let him play their preseason, and then try to figure out a trade at some point, because the tools, DP, and we've seen this guy probably 10 times since February, right? We've seen him a lot. And the tools are enough to where you're like, you know what, third, fourth round, take them and see what happens, right? Like that's just what the tools are. Now, the other stuff that may need to be cleaned up, you just have to go into the NFL and clean it up. And then now you make yourself almost re-attractive again for some more teams to be like, you know what, I've heard good things about him in the NFL. I'm attracted to this physical skill set. I trust him to lead my locker room. Let's take a swing on him and see what happens.
100%, and like you said, the things you got to clean up. I think his lower body mechanics has always been, a work in progress for him. And then working with a guy like AVP, the offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt is a stickler for mechanics. So while you're getting Drake May ready, and once Drake May is penciled in as QB2 behind Jacoby Brissett, and then we see how we know how these conversations happen, Keith. We get to the Senior Bowl, we get to the combine. You got coaches out at 1:00 in the morning eating dinner. You know what I mean, 1:00 at night eating dinner, talking. And it's like, hey man, we need a quarterback. Like, how's Joe Milton been for y'all? And AVP gives a glowing review, because in practice he's doing well, in the classroom he's doing well. He's a consummate pro, and he's great in the locker room. It's like, listen, if we didn't have Drake May, he might have been our QB2 behind Jacoby. You know what I mean? And it's like, so if AVP is giving him that type of endorsement, man, you know what? Hey, look, I'm gonna call my GM. We're gonna call Elliot, Mr. Wolf. We're gonna get him on. We get these guys talking. Let's kind of work out a situation. You guys got Drake May. We need a young quarterback that we could put under center. And I think that's going to be a plan for Joe Milton. I've seen some tweets from Twitter from some Patriot fans like, man, like putting up different gifs and memes of what's going to happen when Joe Milton's starting over Drake May because of some of the throws they've seen in camp and stuff like that. And I just laughed. I was like, guys, I don't think it's going to happen like that. But like you said, Keith, if that turns out to be the case, there's going to have to be a discussion about what went wrong here. Like, you know what I mean? To go from 3rd overall pick to a 7th round pick, and that's the guy who's leading the franchise. Yeah, I don't think that's literally like San Francisco all over again. You know what I mean?
And the thing is that so it takes a very unique situation to happen. And to be honest, if Trey Lance was healthy, I don't think Brock Purdy gets that opportunity, right? It only aligned from even and I'm talking now, not even play. I'm talking about PR and politics of the situation, right? It only aligned because Trey Lance wasn't healthy. You know what I'm saying? And Brock Purdy came in and played well. But if Trey Lance was healthy, Trey Lance would have had those 2-3 years to play. And then they couldn't even make the move to go to Mr. Irrelevant to put it. So it was a very unique situation in San Fran. And I don't foresee it playing out to be a thing in New England. So yeah, Joe Milton, his plan is to continue to play ball and then see what happens down the line and make himself attractive, right? Is AOAI. I used to have a coach always tell me that. And what does that mean? Always on an interview, right? And you always have to understand that. So DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, talking about these quarterbacks, these rookie quarterbacks. We are going to continue to tap in with these rookie quarterbacks throughout the entire thing, man. Training camps, OTAs, preseason. We're going to keep this thing going and flowing, man. But listen, I want to say shout out to Everydays. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we always like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today. And Everyday Shot for being our everydays. On tomorrow's episode, we'll get into some more rookies that can push some of these second-year players from the 2023 class. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow with Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.